All right. Hey everyone. Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome back to our next edition of Fireside Chat with Finance Experts. Today I have Ross with us, who's a seasoned finance leader, and and a seasoned CFO, operations leader with over 3 decades of experience and expertise in finance, strategy, and technology enablement. Um, Ross, through his career, has led organizations for M&A, risk management, and definitely AI-driven transformations. So, what I'm excited to talk about today is understand what Ross's dream AI agent for a CFO looks like. Welcome, Ross. Do you
Thank you.
want to? Yeah,
Yes, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be
no
here.
problem. All right. So probably before we start talking about AI and dream agents, I would just like to understand what kind of are the daily tasks of a CFO or a finance leader. What does this person usually do every day?
Sure, I try to break it down into kind of some key areas. So I think first is really financial oversight and monitoring. So understanding cash flow, liquidity, working capital, and then also strategic decision support, which it would be
Hmm.
the financial reporting and analysis for
Hmm.
stakeholders
Hmm.
and users of financial information is kind of how I break these down into different categories. And then depending on your team or what areas that you perform actually or have your team perform, certainly would varies. But and then the next area would be risk compliance and
Hmm.
governance.
Got
So
it.
understanding what the risk exposures are to your organization, then gap compliance, ensuring that your financials are compliant with the local, state, and tax authorities, and understanding how those change going forward. And then the last area I think I would break it into is growth and innovation. So
Hmm.
trying to understand and develop cost saving initiatives for a company or identifying opportunities for efficiencies and projects. Certainly that revolves around IT and information systems as well.
Got it. So all of that is, in fact, a very large variety of tasks, right? Where do you spend most of your time? Is it maybe looking at reports, emails, or making reports, making slides? Or is it more like, obviously based on the size of the organization, but is it more like, hey, I want to, you end up gathering information and then reviewing it and then maybe asking for communication? Or like, is it that you're always staring at, let's say, an email agent every day, or is it something else?
Sure. No, I think it's kind of all of those. I think depending on what day of the month and time of the year it is, those
Mm.
tasks, the the mix of those things. But certainly you have daily requests that come in from various departments or things that information that can be ascertained, but you may not readily have it. So you kind of you have to go back to other folks or other departments to gather to be able to respond to it.
Mm.
And then really just kind of the financial reporting cycle. That top of mind is, at least for me, usually is, I always want to know what our cash position is. So being able to accurately forecast and having the right amount of cash at the right time in the right place is extremely important. And then being able to provide in-depth analysis to the financials. So a lot of that time is, even before you release financials, a lot of effort and time often goes into it before you pre-close to be able, or it could be after you've already provided preliminary information, then you get requests for additional detail or data to understand trends and analysis. So a lot of that is kind of follow up. So I would break it as, even though all of the tasks are important, but some are more, they're more routine. So just
Mm.
responding or filtering information and getting the right information from the right folks and to the right people that request it. But oftentimes that's not in a readily accessible place. You have to kind of dig it out and find it for to be able to respond to those things. And then the remainder of it is really just analysis. You want to make sure that your actuals are accurate. Is there anything that
Mm.
developing trend that may not be visible on a top level, but maybe something that could be happening on a lower level, and being able to anticipate what that is.
Got it. So maybe can you give an example of when you say, let's say, is the information accurate? So let's say let's say I'm looking at actual cash flow outflow, or cash inflow information. Um, how would you verify that that information is accurate? Like, what does that take for you to verify it?
Sure, I think on a first level is really ensuring. So if you're looking at it on a weekly basis, so making sure that everything is posted. So if your cash receipts have been posted, so a lot of times you get a lot of activity at the end of the week, so you process a lot of payments, and then you receive a lot of cash. So there's kind of a compressed timeline at the end of the week to be able to generate reports, and be able to build a rolling forecast, and
Mm,
then pulling that data into a common file. So your banking information from your payables, what cash receipts, and then forecasting what you anticipate is going to be received from your customers, and then payments that you have upcoming and going forward. I think is just compiling that information. It's all, typically it's readily available,
mm,
but and then analyzing, say, okay, we were expecting a payment from this customer, and it didn't. Is it just a timing thing, or is there something larger happening, or maybe we anticipate um, different expenses that weren't budgeted at the time, that we had to one ad hoc payments that we have to account for in the week. So I think
mm.
those are some of the challenges that you face.
Got it. And is the forecast kind of done on Excel sheets, or are there tools that are typically used?
Yeah, so for us, for most times, it's usually the final iteration of it is in an Excel file.
Mm,
Excel is very flexible. I think having being able there's different tools that you can use to populate an Excel file. You have to kind of build those tools out. But
mm,
for us, it's just a rolling Excel file forecast. But there's certain other tools that are built in, either into an ERP system, or ones that have been that are used in a cash flow model. Sometimes those are really great, but it's Excel. The great thing about Excel is having the flexibility. So it's kind of an advantage of using those types of files, but it's also can be, because you can adjust for those things. Then it can become larger than what you really have, a lot of variables that you have to validate to ensure that it's accurate.
got it. And these models are available as templates, or is it something custom built within organizations? Like the final Excel sheet with
Sure.
everything in it.
Sure, it's usually something that's customized for our, the specific circumstance, depending
Mm,
on what information that the users, I benefit from using it just to see cash flow trends, and then as you forecast out, seeing where you may have liquidity shortages or have excess liquidity, and
mm,
and being able to anticipate that. Of course, you have your routine payroll expenses, but other folks, may want to look at other type of data in terms of, the mix of whether your amount of free cash flow that you're generating versus cash that you're having to borrow from a credit facility, or uh, you know term note payments, and things like that. So those are kind of all the factors that go into to building those types of reports.
got it. Yeah. So essentially custom built to tell the information that you are specifically looking for in the context of the organization.
Sure,
Um,
and I think there's opportunity to build. You can build templates. There's ways to take that. I think the biggest concern, or not maybe not a concern, but it's something, you always, it's nice to have the template format,
mm,
because you can populate it. It pulls the information in quickly. It's really being able to, I guess, make modifications, where you want to be able to change things, refine it. Those are kind of the Excel tool that is useful.
Okay, and so what are these documents that you frequently look at? Like, is it just balance sheets and numbers and these forecasting models, maybe even variance analysis, or are there other documents that, especially as a finance leader, you look at frequently? Not only the transaction ones, right? Like not only the invoices, but yeah.
Sure, in general, or in relation to the cash flow forecasting.
I think in general, but basically across the metrics that you track, or across all those four functions that you talked about right up front. So,
Sure. I mean, there's a number of kind of defined or set metrics. Obviously you have your financial statements, your which include your balance sheet, your income statement, and your cash flow statement, and then really break it down into operational cash flows, and
hmm,
looking at operating margins, for whatever your product mix is, and then understanding if there's variances from what you saw from the previous month, and then looking at comparing your actuals to forecasted amounts.
hmm,
A lot of those, depending on your software system, but for us, a lot of times it's some of the data resides in an ERP system, which is accounting centric, payables, receivables. Sometimes billing information is more, may have a separate billing system, and so pulling some of the detailed information often requires getting that from a more detailed source that maybe roll up into your ERP system. So sometimes I think the data can be siloed. So I guess ultimately it's nice to have it in what I would what you call a data lake, or where
yeah.
all the data resides, where you can access it and request it, and have the detail that's already there.
And do you end up looking at, let's say, contracts, SOWs, or even compliance-related guidelines and things like that? Um,
Yes, I mean, as far as compliance type things, you want to ensure that whatever contractual agreements that you have with your customers and your suppliers are being met. So that could be pricing around your vendors, to ensure that they're giving you the proper pricing that's contractually agreed to. And if there's disputes that occur for uh, customer billing, then you always have to go back and refer to your contractual agreement, whatever the pricing
mm,
arrangements that you have. For other compliance issues, I think the often the challenges is just staying abreast of regulatory and compliance challenges, or changes in compliance. So that could be tax issues. So if your tax, and especially if you operate in various tax jurisdictions, whether it's international, state, and federal tax concerns, you want to always try to keep up with those. And a lot of that, I rely a lot on external uh, consulting to keep abreast of a lot of those things, and ensure that we're making internally, that we're incorporating and anticipating those types of changes. So it's especially in, well as with GAAP, internally we try, certainly are knowledgeable and keep up with the GAAP regulatory requirements, but things that are being anticipated that may take time to prepare for. It's always important to know that those things are happening, and that there's a possibility that it could affect your company in various ways.
got it. And where do you store these documents? So are they like stored on a local server, or where are they kept right now?
Sure, most it's cloud. Most everything is cloud based. I think there's a mix between company cloud, and then you have your personal cloud data. So,
Mhm.
but most everything is a cloud based type uh, document storage.
Got it. Maybe I'll switch gears a little bit. So we've been talking about a CFO's role in kind of financial metrics, understanding where the data comes from, what the CFO does every day. But do you end up kind of getting involved in business model discussions, let's say with the CEO, essentially right from helping decide the pricing of a product to target market to maybe even define certain um, product fitment and all of those things? So how do you interact there?
Sure, especially for forecasting those future changes in product mix or change in customers or change in costs. Those all things kind of go into a forecast or budget.
Hmm.
And so trying for me it's more of a top down approach. Try to understand what your sales forecast looks like. What is the product mix? What is the costs that are going to be incurred with that product mix or sales volume? And then breaking that down into you have your direct costs,
Hmm.
variable costs, fixed costs, administrative costs, and then just going through it on a line item by line item basis
Hmm.
throughout the organization. So if we have a certain amount of sales volume, what is that? What is that? How does that, if you're a manufacturer or provide have some value add
Hmm.
service, or that what is the cost that's going to go into that? So once you kind of know your sales, then you can take that and then estimate and determine your direct costs, and then from that you want to know your contribution margin, and then how that impacts your SG&A at any volume of
Hmm.
revenue and contribution that can support the level of your overhead, and you have the right mix of folks to be able to ensure that you can support the business. So that's
Got it.
typically what as a first pass, and then it kind of goes through iterations, and then you have different scenarios, sales scenarios that
Hmm.
you want to look at. So if we increase sales by this percent, how does that impact your costs? Or and then maybe there's areas that you can look at to increase efficiencies, and you try to hey, maybe if we invest in this type of technology, or maybe it's a new piece of plant equipment, how is that going to impact, and how do we get a return on our investment, and how's that going to impact the cash flow and the contribution margin of the company.
Got it. Maybe a curiosity question. Do you monitor bank transactions at all, or that's completely kind of outsourced or
Yeah,
handed off, delegated?
no, I monitor it. Yeah, I think that's cash flow is always, I think, top of mind. Even if
Okay.
you just go in and look at the balances and see what's in and out. For depending on your internal controls and levels of authority for
Mm.
approvals, there's always upper different levels that have require approvals. So I always like to know what our cash position is at all times. So I may look at it on a daily basis, but then at the end of the week, then I try to understand what is the trend and what is happening. So for me, it's something that you want to stay close to. And of course, it depends on your organization. I mean, some
Got it.
companies have maybe an independent treasury management area department
Mhm.
that is more um, able to devote resources to monitoring those types of things. But I think every CFO wants to know, where's the cash and how are we doing.
Got it. So is okay. Do you look at the bank portal or do you look at the statements that the bank sends?
Yeah, just strictly through portal.
Got it.
I think every bank system has pretty very sophisticated banking portals. Most every I don't we don't do any paper check transactions. Most everything's ACH wire transfers.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
What about compliance monitoring? Is that delegated to other agencies or it's again something typically done in-house? Audit and compliance?
I'm sorry for just general compliance. Yeah, so usually you have a tax. If you have a tax team, tax expert, I think is very valuable, especially when you're operating in different jurisdictional areas. So for example, if you have a European reporting
Yeah.
requirements, you have Lux Luxembourg tax requirements, and then in the U.S. you have federal, and because tax is a continual, it's always evolving and changing depending on uh, political alignment and different things. It's extremely important. So I like to know what is happening. Sometimes these can be very complex. If you have transfer pricing,
Mm.
if you have a company that manufactures in one jurisdiction and then is selling products to another internal company, then you need to monitor and understand the implications for transfer pricing. So a lot of those things are delegated, but you certainly, when you put all of that together, you want to be briefed and understand what are the, if there's any issues, are we, compliance wise, everything is in order.
Got it. And out of all these tasks, so what is it that you enjoy the most? So where is there cool stuff to do?
What do I enjoy the most? Well, I think everyone you want is a producer of financial data and information. You want to be able to provide useful data to users and being able to anticipate changes or market conditions, anything that and understanding how can we make the financial information more impactful or meaningful to the sales organization or to the operations
Mm.
aspect. If there's operational data that can be utilized and refined, I think those are when you can see that it's making an impact on being able to make decisions for the company, and it's
Mm.
useful, and it's the challenge is making it timely and
Mm.
being able to make it in enough detail and incorporate different scenarios to help run an organization. I think those are kind of the areas that are where the CFO and financial and accounting folks can have the most impact on the company, and what outside of that department, that's really what they're looking for. So the challenges for accounting folks is not only keeping up with the close, but then having the right data and information so that you can understand the analysis and what's happening.
Got it. And for doing this, like what are the tools that you use daily? So let's say you talked about being timely. So do you have kind of a custom calendar that you follow, or is it like a daily to-do list, or how does that work? Because I do know that finance works on a calendar, like quarterly, monthly, weekly, yearly. Like there are these preset deadlines always. So how do you personally actually track all of this and ensure it's timely?
Sure. Yeah, we there's usually set deadlines for different types of reporting. So, for example, cash flow is typically a weekly or even daily, an ad hoc daily type thing. But weekly is a more formal
Mm.
reporting time frame. And then from there, it really kind of revolves around month end reporting. So going through a pre-close, ensuring that you have all your sales,
Mm.
you've invoiced everyone that needs to be invoiced. You've ensured that whatever materials, for example, for a manufacturing company that's been received into inventory, and that you've make sure you've accrued it.
Mm.
Um, and then whatever bills of lading that you receive. So it's kind of the pre-close process, but there's various deadlines as you go along that all have to be met in order to get to the end of the month to be able to close.
Mm.
So it's really kind of a weekly, then monthly on financial reporting. After, so in between the month, end of month, and the beginning of the next month, then there may be things that you want to look into to add additional insights into with financial analysis, or maybe something. Hey, this is what we reported. Looks good, but maybe there's something more. So you want to kind of dig into that. And then of course you have audit. It's a year end uh, uh,
Mm.
deadline that has to be considered for your year end financials. So really you start preparing for audit long before, probably by the end of the third quarter, or maybe even sooner for some things. And then, you have uh, tax deadlines, whether that could be sales tax, which is monthly, to federal tax returns, which are annual, and then there's other, you may have franchise tax reporting. So there's a yes. So to answer your question, the short, you have to have a checklist to kind of help manage it.
Do you use any kind of software tool to do that today, or how do you do that?
Just kind of a worksheet that, and then who's responsible for what process, and then ensuring that those things are completed at the end of the month is typically usually how it's done. There's certainly other ways that can be do it more advanced or more automated, I'm sure.
Got it. So what tools do you actually use for your daily tasks?
Well, I mean, you use your Excel. I mean, I think Excel is probably the most
Yeah.
used tool. You use, certainly email, PowerPoint, and then your ERP system. Being able to, I like to be able to utilize a lot of the detailed information. You can request it, but some things you have to request. Others, it's helpful
Mm.
to be able to access it directly, so that you don't have to add that to someone else's task. You may need to do that, but if you can access that information to answer questions that you may get, being to get into the details of your system, and is, I think is highly important. And then in different scenarios where we've had separate billing systems, so that's kind of where more detailed information can reside.
Mm.
So there's certain reporting that everyone does on a month-end basis, but then there's always ad hoc things that come up during the month, and kind of sometimes the challenges that a lot of data doesn't get fully entered, or all the transactions, until the end of the month. And so sometimes you're trying to access, hey, what's happening on this week or this day, and sometimes it's not always all of the information has been posted. So sometimes that can be a challenge.
Got it. Do you use any AI-based tools here, or what are the AI-based tools that you use every day?
Yeah, so it's basically around robotic process automation,
Yeah.
payables type, being able to match supplier invoices with delivery bill of ladings documents, and then putting that in a batch file that can be posted, and then determining if there's exceptions that require someone to review or to look at, if your the PO and your delivery documents and the invoice that you receive, if there's discrepancies or mismatch, those get kicked out. But I think those are kind of the basic things I think are great. Most companies can benefit immediately, is really taking the routine um, transactions that occur around payables and receivables that don't
Mm.
require it, but it's just mainly entering the information and posting it, and allowing uh, personnel to be able to work on issues that occur that may require further investigation. So I think
Got
those
it.
are real opportunities. I also use on more of an ad hoc basis, for financial analysis. So taking um, financial forecast report, and then
Mm.
just asking an AI to take it apart, to look at it, look for anything that's unusual, trends, those types of things. Um,
Got it.
but certainly I think there's real where you can automate that on a routine, more customized process, would is I think is can be greatly beneficial. And I think that's some of the things that financial folks and users of being able to provide a lot of insight into financial information, but also being able to produce it in a very timely fashion. Those are always the challenges. So any opportunity that you can automate some of those back end processes, I think helps achieve those goals.
Got it. How often do you look at external sources? So let's say news, stock, all of that. Like, is that something that you monitor closely, especially in the context of the organization, or it's more like, um, yeah, there's news and you look at it like any regular person, but not worry about the impact on the
Ex-
organization.
External information.
Yes,
Sure. Yeah, I think it's very important. There's a myriad of things that you want to be cognizant of. Interest rates, for one. What is the economic forecast or conditions that are being anticipated. The tariffs. I think those have been a big area of concern and understanding how is this going to impact my costs and what are the long term implications. Or and you can even go back even a little bit further, with COVID. Then it was around the supply chain disruptions. First you had the disruptions, and then it took a long time, at least seems for some areas, for the supply chain to reset and reestablish itself, because there's a lot of times there was shortages of materials, and even post that time frame. So you're always wanting to know, especially how does that impact my suppliers. What's going to happen externally is a very important piece of that.
got it. So even things like new restrictions or new whatever incentives is something that you monitor closely.
Sure. Yeah, where maybe there's market opportunities for an organization to, maybe there's change in regulatory where it's going to create a new opportunity for different things. I think those are extremely important to monitor. Kind of those, for me, those are more staying abreast of those types of things.
Mhm.
It's not, I don't know that, is, I try to filter that information, and you get a lot of data and try to understand, okay, how could this potentially impact the company or the future, or do we need to account for these types of risks, is really, and opportunities. Um, so as far as having a formal system to be able to help identify and determine that, it's kind of more, uh, it's more reliant on your own judgment,
Got
and
it.
external consultants. You get, especially when I mention tax, tax folks. You rely on them because they usually have access to information, understand what's happening on a on a regulatory basis long before it ever becomes a law, or a change in gap. A lot of
Mhm.
times there's committees that are determining a lot of this information, and when it looks like this is going to come to fruition, you kind of want to be ahead of that. So they often have access to that kind of information that can say, hey, this is a potential area that you need to be concerned with.
Got it. And let's say you had an AI powered workspace that kind of started your day to start your day. What features or functionalities would you want to see in there?
Sure. I think, I think initially, I think it's really being able to handle, even though they're important tasks, but they're routine tasks. There's things, it could be just helping manage emails. It could be gathering information on a routine basis so that you don't have to automate different reporting tools. I think those are kind of, I think everyone's days, you have a tasks that are routine, but they're basic, and then you have more, I guess, value added things that someone may do, whether it's investigating different analysis or dealing with different issues. A lot of times you're responding to requests for data and information, and so certainly it would be nice to, uh, give a voice command and say, hey,
Hmm.
handle this information, or go find this data. I need to put together a response, in a short order. Those are, I think, freeing up time to be able to do more analytical analysis, forecasting, strategic thought leadership, is where you want to have your time spent. All of these other tasks build into that. They're important. They're required. But sometimes responding to a simple email for a request of a piece of information, even though you could ascertain it, but you may not have it right there on your desk or be able. So you have to either dig for it yourself or ask someone else and then that creates something that you add to someone else's day as well. So try to be respectful of that.
Yeah, so that particular task, would you be okay if your AI actually went in, drafted an answer, and then just gave an email draft and said, "Hey, can I just send it out?" And found the document, pulled it in, all of that. So would you be okay with this intelligent workspace reading into your mailbox and reading into your documents?
Yeah, I think for me, I think there's there's always security concerns, and auditability of these
Yeah.
types of systems, but really making sure that your data is secure. So if you have an automated system that's getting access to your emails and your information, then you want to have confidence that it's secure and that it's not going to be disclosed in areas that you wouldn't want that to happen. I look from my personal perspective, I look at AI as more, I think I find a lot of value in AI being able to do a lot of things and then coming back and say, hey, this is what I found, or is this, if I respond to an email, this is how I would
Hmm.
respond. But having that final say, I think is to ensure that there's, that it's consistent. I think is important. I think it needs to come from that person. If you send an email to someone, um, if it's directed to them and they're asking you a specific question, I think you can delegate finding that or how to
Hmm.
respond, but actually respond, it needs to come from that person. If you're, maybe they're okay, hey, I'm going to send this to my
Hmm.
AI assistant, and if they're so, well, I'd still want to see it. I don't, even though they're oftentimes the response is as good or could be better, but I don't know that I could at this state. You still want to have that oversight, and I think that's important. That's what in any organization you're required to have that oversight, whether at whatever level. So you just turning it and saying, hey, just do it, and not without any oversight, is going to raise audit, as it applies to different things, audit concerns. Who's monitoring, who's looking at this to ensure that it's giving the correct responses.
Hmm. And what about like privacy and security of your data? Would you be okay sending all the information to the AI, and as long as it's stored in your space, or what level of guarantee would you want such whatever such intelligence to give you so that you're comfortable using it? Like, how do you see like the whole CFO community responding to this kind of stuff?
Well, for financial data, I think you want to make sure that the workspace that the AI is operating in is secure and it's contained. You don't want you know you don't want that information to leak out. I think that's a big concern for a lot of folks. First off is ensuring that your own data is secure, and if you give some tool the access to that data, then you want to ensure that it's using the data in the manner that you intended, and that it's not going to somehow leak out into the internet. And I think there's no doubt there's ways to ensure that. So I think that's an audit. That's a compliance and audit thing. You have to, not only do you want to know that as a company, but your auditors are going to want to know that too, and they want to know how did you demonstrate that this data is secure, that your environment is secure, and how are the results that the AI is generating and the tasks that it's doing is what you anticipated. So I think you have to have an AI governance
Hmm.
to help guide that. And then, so if you have an AI agent that performs certain tasks, just say it's a reconciliation or a payables automation, then you're going to want to test it. I mean, because I think your auditor is going to want to know if you deployed this, then how did the company get comfortable around using it, and what are the checks and balances that you're using in order to ensure that it's giving the right results. And so maybe you have an agent do certain tasks, and then you have someone that goes and tests, so they pull some receipts or some invoices to ensure that it's providing the results that you want, is what I think is the kind of a best practice way to approach it. Even though I know it's perfectly secure, but you have to provide a level of assurance, and I think that helps a lot with, when it comes time for your auditors to look at it. They want to know what did you do to ensure that this is working within the boundaries, the realms that you've provided.
Got it. And have you that's actually useful, very useful. Did you actually come across a task that, let's say, you in the past few weeks, where you almost felt like I need a AI assistant to do this rather than me doing it?
Sure, I think I think the hope is where you can take all your data and use it. I think a real benefit is around budgeting and forecasting. Because a lot of times a forecast or budget takes a long time to build up a file and a lot of information, and then you have a lot of variables. So it would I think it where you could put in various scenarios, and then it would you could take that and it would run the uh, the different scenarios and give you different outputs. I think is those are, you want to analyze what if analysis. So if I had an increase of sales, or maybe our costs went up this amount, or those types of things, where you can communicate that in a way directly,
Hmm.
then it would go out and perform those tasks. So it could say, okay, yeah, and then, or take your budget or your forecast and put it into a system. Either they pull the information directly, the historic information. You take your
Hmm.
inputs from your various functional areas, and then do analysis on it. Say, these assumptions correct once, and give it parameters and enough data, historical data, so that it could look and say, yeah, this makes sense, or no, you may want to look at this. I think those are some real promising areas for uses of AI. Not to turn it over, but that would be information that you would use to developing a strategic output.
Got it. Uh, what does your dream AI look like? Like, what does your dream AI agent look like? Dream AI agent?
Yeah, I
Like,
think that would how I would describe it. I mean, I think, building on basic, the AR, the AP automation, then around close, being able to automate your financial close and reporting.
mm,
The demand is, you always want more, you know, timely information, but you also want it to be accurate. And so
mm,
sometimes those can be, you want to get the books closed, so you give it a good go through, but you want to, so if you can achieve both of those at the same time, or within tolerances, those are really great things. Audit and compliance monitoring, I think that's a great area where you could have an agent that just is just going out and looking at
mm,
your data on a regular basis. Cash flow forecasting, I think that's another great, where it would just, you can pull the data from your systems and then use that to develop your forecasts.
mm,
Is a great, a lot of these tasks that they just require pulling a lot of information from different areas, and analyzing, and that, kind of that piece, instead of the transactional piece of it, where you can automate that and
mm,
make it happen sooner, where you have more time and resources to devote to actually analyzing the the data, is that's what everyone I think desires. And then another is fraud and detection, where you have an agent that
Hmm.
can go out
Yeah.
and look at different transactions and or a preventive area where it can look at those things and ensure that. So you have that kind of going on a continual basis instead of at a at various points in time, because a lot of times you don't always have the resources to devote to that. So that happens for audit or different periods of time throughout your year, but having something that's continuously looking at that, and then putting in the appropriate oversight to that, I think that'd be kind of a dream system.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there something that kind of keeps you up at night as a
Um,
pain point? Yeah,
you're always, as far as what keeps, I mean, I think really just cash flow, liquidity.
right.
I think those are always
Yeah,
you always want to make sure you can meet your financial obligations. Um, and then, really, I think that kind of goes in with financial planning and analysis and forecasting, is kind of balancing your short-term expectations with your long-term growth plans, and make sure that those are aligned. So sometimes those can be just, may not always be connected, or make, what are those assumptions look like. Those are important. And then I think also compliance, making sure that you don't have anything that's any surprises with compliance. Those are kind of a few things that are top of mind.
yeah, yeah. So we are going to make AI do all of that, and that kind of becomes your dream agent. But thanks for this. I think we are almost at the top of the discussion. So I was actually listening very closely while you were speaking, and we ended up covering a lot of aspects. But I think if I have a one kind of takeaway or one tagline to take back, it's like you want AI to do all your routine tasks correctly, so that you have time to for strategy, or essentially time to think and do things rather than do those mundane things. So yeah. Thanks for that, and yeah, thanks for all the insights. And any thoughts you want to close with?
No, I think for anyone I think everyone's looking at AI. It's top of mind. I think my thought is that regardless of where you are on that journey, is to start looking at it. You can start with basic things and then build on that. I think the impact is going to be significant on how we do business and efficiencies. And I think having a a plan or governance, having an AI governance document that determines who's going to be determining which projects, which areas that you're going to move forward with, and kind of the order that you do that, no matter what those steps are,
Hmm.
that start that journey. And the other thing I think is to do an internal analysis, to look at what are some of the areas that you feel like that in your company where you would be something. Hey, I really wish we had something that could do this or that. So kind of look at the problem, and then look at what the solution would be, because I think the tendency is like, oh, we need to do this right away, so we've got to grab a solution, and it may not always be aligned. And I think by determining what you want to accomplish with it, then it's easier to measure your return and the efficiencies, and then kind of take a strategic approach to using artificial intelligence.
Got it. All right. Thanks for that. And it was great talking to you, and thanks for everyone who joined.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
All right.